It has been 13 years since author George R. R. Martin released his last book, A Dance with Dragons, the fifth installment of the book series, A Song of Ice and Fire. After the subpar ending of the TV show adaptation of the book series, A Game of Thrones, fans have been left waiting for the book's ending, hoping for a more fulfilling conclusion. Join me and fellow YouTuber The Advocate as we try to unpack what is to come with the character of Arya Stark in the Winds of Winter.
When you play the Game of Thrones, you
Subscribe and like.
die. There is no middle ground.
All right, welcome back to the channel. I'm joined once again by JC.
Hey, thanks for having me once again, Greece. Always a pleasure to converse a Song of Ice and Fire with you.
Of course, this is definitely the first time we've recorded this. It's not like we had a little oopsie, but it's okay. We're going to be talking about Arya Stark in the Winds of Winter, and we're going to talk a little bit about the sample chapter first because I think that makes the most sense to kind of predict where the character is going to go from there. So I'll let JC kind of introduce the lore, the history of the sample chapter to begin with. Part 1, Arya Sample Chapter.
So for those of you at home who are not aware, George R. R. Martin has previously published, I believe, 10 or 11 sample chapters for The Winds of Winter, sample chapters that he wrote over the past couple of 13 years since the release of A Dance with Dragons that are kind of an appetizer for the Winds of Winter book. However, a lot of these sample chapters have not yet been officially canonized. So a lot of the information from these chapters, despite the fact that they are to take place in the Winds of Winter, George R. R. Martin may go back and rewrite certain things from these chapters. So they're not 100% confirmation of things to happen yet. But the Mercy sample chapter is the closest thing we have to what Arya could potentially to very likely be doing in the Winds of Winter. So with that said, again, Arya is the main point of view character within the Mercy sample chapter. The Mercy sample chapter has a very interesting history. So George R. R. Martin actually originally wrote this chapter way back in 2001. So long before even A Feast for Crows or A Dance with Dragons ever saw the light of day. And George R. R. Martin wrote this chapter with the intention of Arya being 5 years older than what she is at the end of A Storm of Swords. For those of you who don't know, George R. R. Martin originally had finished the story of A Storm of Swords with the intention of growing all the characters within that book by 5 years in this 5-year time skip. So by the time A Feast for Crows begins, Arya and all the other characters would be 5 years older. So Arya would technically be age 16, not age 11 like she is in A Feast for Crows now. So rereading the Mercy sample chapter, Arya is wearing the face of this 16-year-old girl who's set to take place in this play, this Bravosi play that's meant to entertain, all the people that are there in Essos and any potential Westerosi elite that are just stopping by and visiting.
It has a great name,
Arya,
The Bloody Hand.
The Bloody Hand.
The Bloody Hand.
Oh, it's perfect. That's perfect. It's a wonderful chapter. If you haven't read it, if you're watching this and haven't read it, I'd fully recommend just doing a quick Google search, Arya Mercy, and it's one of the top Google searches you'll find, I'm sure. But it's a wonderful story, very, very well written. But anyway, all this to say, rereading the Mercy sample chapter, I'm not sure if George. I have a very strong inclination, a very strong feeling that George will likely change a lot of things from the Mercy sample chapter from what he originally wrote in 2001, because Arya, again, when George R. R. Martin initially wrote this, he had intended for Arya to be a 16-year-old girl. He has, in this chapter, Arya in some very promiscuous kind of sexual situations here.
Hard to read
that are,
when you think about her age.
Yeah, that are definitely not appropriate for a little girl. So I'm not sure if he will change that. But anyway, all this to say that Arya is an 11-year-old girl. She is wearing the face of a 16-year-old person named Mercy. And Greece, if you wouldn't mind doing the honors of describing the events that take place within this Mercy sample chapter.
Thank you. That was a great introduction into it because even I didn't know some of those things that you brought up. But
yeah,
the main point of it is just there's this play that's going on, and Arya's supposed to be in it, but instead she sees, somebody that she recognizes. With Harris Swift, who comes over to negotiate with the Iron Bank, who's at this play. One of his guards is Wrath the Sweetling, somebody that Arya has quite a history with. And so she takes the opportunity here to basically do a revenge kill. It's pretty gruesome. It's, like you described, Arya has to do some very sexual things that are very awkward to read. And then basically she gets him and basically kills him in a very satisfying way. And the chapter kind of ends on kind of an interesting note because it seems to lead at the idea that Arya is going to try and leave Bravos or run away. And that's kind of the vibe I get from it, JC. I don't know if you have a different feeling because that last like 2 or 3 sentences can be interpreted in a lot of different ways. Part 2, Leaving Bravos.
I certainly think that'll be the last time she wears the mercy face. I
Yeah.
don't believe personally that will be the last time we see Arya participating in one of these House of Black and White missions.
I don't either, but I think I'm kind of torn because I do feel like Arya has to leave Bravos within like the first half of the book, just based upon I think where her story is going, and I think that you have to remember this is somebody that she's killing that she's not supposed to be killing, right? And so the last time she
Yeah.
did that didn't go so well. She got basically punished for that, and she had to overcome some stuff. And so now this is another time where she's kind of broken the ideals, I guess, of the faceless men. And so I think that Arya will be in a sticky situation where I think that the faceless men may realize, okay, we can't really take Arya out of her, and so they may send her on a mission that would maybe lead to Westeros of killing somebody else. And there's a number of people you could say. I just think there has to be some reason that she goes to Westeros, and I guess we can kind of transition into like after the sample chapter. If you look at
Yeah.
the way Game of Thrones did it, Game of Thrones just simply had it where Arya kills the waif and then just basically ambushes Jaqen more or less and leaves. I can tell you right now,
Jaqen just kind of was
JC.
like, Jaqen's cool with it. He's like, yeah, sure, whatever,
Yeah,
just go off, go to
and he never,
Westeros.
never, never pops up ever again. We have no resolution of the faceless men at all.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you think it's going to go a different way, but do you have any ideas that like come to mind right away about how maybe Arya goes to Westeros or her dealings with the faceless men after the sample chapter?
Yeah. I mean, for one, I don't think Arya will be stabbed, 100,000 times
That's true.
in the gut, and then Arya will miraculously survive and make her way towards Westeros. I don't think we'll have the stabbing incident here within the book, but as far as what happens after this killing of Wrath the Sweetling, I do think she does come clean to the Kindly Man. The Kindly Man is the person that runs the House of Black and White. I do think she will admit to him that, this is a person that I murdered. I don't think they'll be too happy. I don't know if they'll punish her. They, as you said, Grease, they may find that Arya is too much Arya, has too much Arya within her to be a faceless man. So they may send her on this quest to go to Westeros to take care of someone within Westeros. Um, but one way or another, I do think that she will leave the House of Black and White. She will leave Bravos, and the House of Black and White will probably not want to have her, have her within Essos anytime soon. So whether Arya goes because of a mission that was given to her, or Arya goes on her own behalf, I do think that prior to the midway point of Winds of Winter, Arya will leave Bravos and head back to Kingsland to Westeros.
Part 3, Assassination Targets. I agree. That just has to happen. One thing that Winds of Winter, I think a struggle for George is he has all these different POVs because Dance and Feast really opened up the world. He has to now kind of get all these storylines to be somewhat together, and I think that's a struggle. And so that's why I think Arya has to, one way or another, like you said, get to Westeros. I think it's going to be because they're going to use Arya kind of as a tool, more or less, to basically, we'll forgive you of your, things you've done, but we're not going to let you just leave the Faceless Men after, we've already trained you, did all this stuff, and shown you some of our secrets or whatnot. I think she's going to be scheduled, probably kill someone who's a target of them, or they want to get killed. There could be a couple options, and this is where I think open to a discussion. But the people that kind of come to mind right away for me are people like Cersei, Daenerys, just because of the history the Facelessmen seem to have with Valyria,
Hmm.
Jaqen, or the character of Jaqen. He is in Old Town looking for books on dragons, some sort of interest there. We don't really know the full
Yeah.
length of that. Could be like Daenerys, could be Cersei. She's somebody not paying off, the Iron Bank on the throne. We've already even seen the Iron Bank try to support Stannis instead. Could be they're trying to take out Cersei so that somebody else pay them. And yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on all of that? A lot to unpack.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be a major if they do send her on a mission to take care of someone within Westeros. I don't know if it'll be someone of high rank like Cersei. First of all, I don't even know if the Iron Bank of Bravos and the House of Black and White have much overlap there in terms of the Iron Bank of Bravos tells the House of Black and White like, oh, this person hasn't paid their debt. Can you take care of him? And the Faceless Men are like, oh, it shall be done.
Let me
Um,
clarify. I was meaning more that they would like kind of hire the faceless men, not just like order them around. I was saying more like they would hire the faceless men, and then because Arya wants to go to Westeros, that's where she wants to go. They try to use Arya as a tool to execute that. That's kind of where I was
oh,
going
okay,
with that.
gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, I'm still of the mind that if they do send her on a mission to Westeros, it might just be someone not quite as high ranking as Cersei, but maybe someone, more up the food chain, maybe like a Lannister commander or something, along those lines, a military, you know, lieutenant, as someone who is high ranking, but not,
Yeah,
the
I get
queen
you.
regent or something like that.
Part 4, Revenge. Something that I think is interesting is we see Arya's main theme seems to be like revenge, and she has this list of names and trying to get vengeance for her family and all these things, and I think that's something that's George is really going to challenge, right? I think he is going to really challenge the character of Arya to think about those things. And when you have a character like Lady Stoneheart, who I do think we're kind of skipping a little bit, but I do think
Yeah,
she is going to meet up with the Lady Stoneheart plot line. I think when you take the pairing of a character like Stoneheart, who basically their whole persona is just getting revenge on the phrase, um,
yeah,
and you take that with an Arya character who's kind of having similar things, kind of going further and further as she keeps murdering people. I think that could be a really good pairing. JC, I don't know if you've gone that far. Do you think that we will see Arya in kind of the Brotherhood Without Banners storyline or Stoneheart storyline?
yeah. No, I fully agree with you. I do think that if Arya is going to go to Westeros, she will wind up in the Riverlands. Her story just seems to be tied hand in hand with Lady Stoneheart. Lady Stoneheart being this kind of metaphoric representation of what it looks like when someone is consumed wholly by revenge. Obviously, Catelyn physically looks the way she does because of her being killed at the Red Wedding and then dumped in the river. So obviously, that had something to do with her appearance. But in addition to that, her outer physical appearance is a representation of just her inner hatred, just all the darkness and anger she has inside of her, her desire to essentially kill all the Freys and Boltons that were responsible for the Red Wedding incident. It's a very great representation of how revenge can toxify you as a human being. And Arya being someone who is still, kind of on her childish quest about, oh, I've got my prayer hit list and I'm going to take care of, Wrath the Sweetling, which she does in the Mercy chapter. I'm going to take care of Cersei. I'm going to take care of, all these other people that have harmed me in some way. It's my quest for revenge. I do think Arya will eventually meet and I don't know how this will happen exactly, but I think at some point she will meet Lady Stoneheart, and it may be kind of a dawning on her moment where she realizes that, oh wow, this is what might be what happens to me, if I continue on this murderous revenge quest that doesn't really solve anything. I could wind up like my deceased reanimated mother, and it would also go hand in hand with George R. R. Martin's message, his overall theme about how revenge is a double-edged sword. The person who often winds up dead is a person who is the one seeking revenge, and Catelyn slash Lady Stoneheart is seeking revenge, and you see what she looks like, you see what's done to her. Arya, if she continues to go down this course, she could wind up like that as well.
Agreed. And
So
I think something that'd be interesting is you think about, Storm of Swords. She's with already a character like that, like the Hound, somebody that is consumed by those things.
yeah,
And you think about where the Hound's character goes, and we don't have confirmation that he's alive, but it seems like he's alive. You know, we see probably him in Brienne's chapters in A Feast for Crows, and it would be really interesting if she met not only Lady Stoneheart or Catelyn, and then the Hound as well, and seeing two different people and their different paths they've gone on. It seems like the Hound has kind of gone off that road of being this vengeful, brutal kind of person. Part 5, Red Wedding 2.0. I think Arya to me is the character that I'm most looking forward to in terms of development for Winds of Winter, because there's
yeah,
just so much you can play with, and I think something that'd be really awesome. And this is kind of coming from because I just got done rereading A Storm of Swords. I think it would be really cool if George kind of paralleled, the first Red Wedding. We have Arya's chapter where she's trying to get to her family after they've been killed and all of that, but she's too late and all that. I think it'd be really cool if we do have another version of the Red Wedding, with the Brotherhood Without Banners and Lady Stoneheart leading this basically revenge Red Wedding on the phrase that we know is possible, or not possible, we know is going to be happening in Winds of Winter. It would be interesting to see Arya show up, but this time make it. But this time it's not her family being killed. It's we're seeing all these innocent people being slaughtered, and as much as the phrase do horrible things, it's not only the phrase that are going to be killed at something like this. Would be innocent people that are just
yeah,
servants, or and to really kind of show that violence is not great. That's one of the main things that George has, is he shows the brutality of things.
yeah,
One chapter I read before we got on this recording was Daenerys in book 5, where she's seeing all these Astapori refugees and they're dying and sickness, and she can't do anything to help them. That's kind of been George's big theme about war. I think having Arya come back as this character who's very vengeful, has this hit list and being transformed by interacting with whatever is left of her mother, and being having that have some sort of effect on her character. If she does have a mission, like we've both talked about, with the Faceless Men, how does that affect her ability to do that mission? Will she go, no, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to, kill people and do all these things. How does that then affect her relationship with the Faceless Men? Is she looking over her shoulder the rest of her life, thinking the Faceless Men may come after me because I didn't complete this mission that they gave me? I think all that's really compelling for Arya. I don't know, JC, if you agree with that or not.
yeah. I want to circle back to what you had mentioned about Arya. Obviously in A Storm of Swords, she was one chapter too late to,
Yep.
well, not save, but to interact with Catelyn and Robb. She shows up just a little bit too late at the Red Wedding. It would be an interesting parallel if the Winds of Winter, she shows up at the second Red Wedding just in time and sees, the horrors of what a revenge Red Wedding would look like, the horrors of just what revenge in general looks like.
Yes.
The show, and I'm not sure if the show was at this point by season 7 was following the bullet points from George R. R. Martin, or if this was completely, new creation from D&D. But Arya killing all the Freys in this Red Wedding 2 scenario, and then it just kind of, I'm sure maybe that was a bullet point that George R. R. Martin had shared with D&D. But the key difference here was that in that season 7 episode where Arya performs this Red Wedding revenge scenario, it's played as this, oh, our daring heroic Arya saves, she does revenge and she killed all these Freys after the horrible things they did. Oh, don't we just love Arya for what she did here? Oh, let's play some heroic music in the background as Arya walks out triumphantly from the twins. Whereas if this were to happen in the books, I think George R. R. Martin would play it more as, I mean, this is a horrible thing. Regardless of whether or not the people who are dying are, horrible, evil people, this is still a horrible thing because at the end of the day, I'm sure there's people within the twins that are completely innocent of anything that happened that transpired during the Red Wedding, and yet they are being slaughtered needlessly in this convoluted revenge Red Wedding scheme, and it's just not, it's not good. It's not pretty. It's not, it's horrible. So I do agree with you, Grease. I think Arya arriving here, you know, at the twins for a second encounter with the phrase, and then seeing what transpires here if a revenge red wedding were to happen, it would transform Arya, or at least plant a seed within her to say to realize that, oh, this is not a good thing. I need to, all this time that I've been praying, this hit list that I've been, talking about these names that I want dead. Is this even right? Is this even what I want? And it would kind of slowly transform her to kind of grow out of that into a newer character.
Part 6, Differences in Show and Books. Agreed. And, circling back to what you talked about with kind of the show and the direction they went with, and I think, yeah, the issue the show had with, you know, certain plot points is that you're going all the way back to season 4. They didn't really set up Brienne's story to follow A Feast for Crows and what goes further than that. They basically cut that in season 4 because they just don't go with it. And so when you get to the point of, okay, how does that conflict get resolved? We know that they have to be gone from the story. Well, we don't have a brotherhood without banners that are really established and have even the power to take down the phrase. And so we kind of just throw in Arya because yes, she has some involvement with the phrase, reasons to kill them, but it just comes off as glorifying violence, themes that are completely against George R. R. Martin's own writing. It's some of the stuff that, more recently with House of the Dragon season 2, I'd say more like kind of in season 1 as well, but where we've had these big scenes of where innocents are being killed and it's just played off as a heroic moment when that's just never what the book series has been about. And I think that as fans, I think that we kind of let it go. I don't know how I want to say this. I think fans applauded Arya when killing the phrase when we did those things led to more issues that D&D did because of the reactions the show was getting. Like the show wasn't really getting bad reviews or any of that stuff till season 8. Like I think people realized some of the dip in quality, but it wasn't enough to just allow D&D to do the same things over and over again, forgetting the themes of the story. But
Yeah, season 7 was still, I mean, you started seeing a couple of
yeah,
rumblings here and there from people that were rightfully so kind of noticing the cracks within the
yeah,
writing, but people were too blinded by the, "Oh, look, Arya did this wonderful heroic thing. Yes, revenge on the phrase." And it's played up as this, heroic thing. And it's like, oh, everyone's applauding Arya for what she did.
like no, that should not
Yeah,
you just had
that
Arya
does not fly.
kill off an entire family and it did nothing for her character development whatsoever. She doesn't change
Yeah.
at all. If anything, she becomes more of like a psychopath throughout the series. Part 7, Final Conclusions. But okay, so getting past then, this revenge red wedding happens or it doesn't happen, whatever. By the end of the story of Winds of Winter, JC, where do you think that she's going to be? Do you think she's going to be heading King's Landing, heading maybe up north? What do you think?
So I do think her story will be intertwined with Lady Stoneheart's, and I think it would be very poetic if, at the beginning of the book, if Winds of Winter starts with this chapter where Arya does kill Wrath the Sweetling, as we saw in the Mercy Sample chapter, and then it ends with her killing, the first chapter being the indication of like Arya still very much kind of deep into this revenge, like, oh, I'm going to kill everyone involved and whoever did me harm in the past, and then her ending the Winds of Winter by killing Lady Stoneheart, signifying that Arya is done with this revenge stuff. She had to kill her mother in order
Yeah.
to do away with who she was becoming, this kind of vengeful person. So it would be a good character arc if at the end of the story she kills Lady Stoneheart. But what about you, Grease? What do you think?
So I'm very interested where George is going to place, the Lady Stoneheart stuff we're talking about. I don't know if it is going to be at the end of the book, if it's going to be somewhat like in the middle of the book, how the Red Wedding
Mm.
was with the Storm of Swords. That'd be kind of difficult to pull off though, because you have Arya still in Bravos. You would expect at least I don't even know how many chapters I would expect. Maybe 3 would be the minimum. I would assume that she'd be in Bravos for still,
Yeah. Yeah,
but
you'd want like maybe 3 Bravos chapters, and then maybe I'm not sure if he wants to narrate the events of Arya traveling from
Yeah.
Bravos to Westeros, but I would think that the middle of the book sounds good if they are, or late middle sounds
Yeah.
good for a Red Wedding 2, and then maybe ending the book with Lady Stoneheart dying.
Yeah. And see, my thing is, I don't know when like Lady Stoneheart would die. Like, I feel like I've always just kind of said that, oh yeah, during the Revenge Red Wedding, Arya finds Lady Stoneheart and kills her then. But it's an interesting point. Like, if it's not at that point and it goes on a little bit further, do you think, Lady Stoneheart, because some people have speculated in the community, I'm not one of these people, but that Lady Stoneheart gives Rob's crown to Jon. I just don't think that's within the character of Catelyn or Stoneheart at all. But
Yeah, no.
do you see a situation where maybe Arya takes Rob's crown, and that's how maybe Jon gets his crown if he's named King of the North or something along the line? I feel like there's just been too much significance put on Rob's crown that it's just gonna kind of go away with Stoneheart.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm really not sure. Truthfully, I've not thought about Rob's crown, so I don't know. It is a significant, not just because it's a valuable piece of, treasure. It's this
Yeah,
crown, but also for the significance that it represents. Of, it marked the end of the North, and now Arya coming back and reclaiming the crown, and then potentially giving it to Jon would be the return of the North, the resurrection of the North per se. I Yeah, I mean, I could potentially see her grabbing Rob's crown and then killing Lady Stoneheart, but I don't know if it would dawn on Arya at that point in the story that, like, oh, this was the crown that my older brother
yeah.
wore. It's something valuable. Maybe I should grab it or something like that. I don't know how she would kind of go, like, what within her mind would allow her to formulate this opinion. It's like, oh, I need to grab this and retrieve it and get out of here and give it to John.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the way I would probably do it if I was going to go down that route would just have like one of the other Brotherhood Without Banners members that Arya would know, maybe recognize her and then tell her some of the significance, or maybe Arya's even brought to Stoneheart because Stoneheart is looking for her.
Yeah,
Maybe that would be part of it. Who knows? There's so many things that George could do with Stoneheart, Arya, Brotherhood Without Banners characters that
yeah.
it'd be interesting to see what he does. But even after that point, I think the way I see Arya's like ending point would be her at least deciding where she's going to go next. Like kind of how Daenerys in book 3 has this idea of like I'm going to stay and rule. Like there's a decision brought up that either she's going to go to Westeros or she stays. I think something like that will be kind of in the crossroads for Arya. Does she go south to try and kill Cersei if she's still alive at this point, or west wherever Cersei is if she's at Casterly Rock, or King's Landing still, whatever. And Arya has to choose between her revenge or her family. And I think that would be a good way to end it, where she chooses her family. She goes north to find, Jon, and maybe Sansa's revealed at this point. Who knows on that one? But what do you think on that, JC?
Yeah, it would be a good kind of a crossroads moment for Arya after, where, whether or not she kills Lady Stoneheart, but after, her storyline in the Riverlands, if she kind of comes at this crossroads, like, oh, do I want to continue? Hopefully, by this point, Arya has already figured out that
Yeah,
going down this revenge quest is a no go. So maybe based on that, she's like, well, going down to, or maybe going west towards Casterly Rock if Cersei does wind up retreating
yeah,
from King's Landing and going west towards uh, the Westerlands. Regardless, Arya chasing after Cersei by that point, maybe it will have lost its appeal because she will realize that, oh, revenge doesn't do anything, so maybe I should go north. And again, it's kind of dependent on, if whether or not by this point in the story, if Jon has been resurrected and is doing stuff in the north, is rallying
yeah.
the north, or if Sansa shows up, it's pending all that stuff. But assuming that goes similarly, well, similarly in quotation marks, to how the TV show went, then I could see Arya going north to be with Jon and potentially Sansa, and just kind of telling them of everything she's been through, and also commenting on the fact that, oh, also, I had to kill our resurrected mother, and you know all the
That'd
horrors
be
that
a
were involved in that.
interesting conversation for Jon. Be like, oh, Catelyn turned into a undead zombie thing and was killing people. What a shock. John would be like, I, she's gonna haunt my
I see
dreams
that
now.
every
She's a
day.
zombie. Yeah, um, but yeah, I think it's really interesting because I think the hardest thing to predict with Winds of Winter is the timing of events. Like, when do
Yeah.
things happen? Like, we may have a general idea of where we think characters are going to go, but is that going to happen before this event? Will that happen after it? My biggest issue I've always had is I think young Griff will take the throne. I just don't know when. Like, I don't know at what point of the story would George maybe pull the trigger and have young Griff be on the throne, and maybe Cersei's imprisoned, killed, Casterly Rock, whatever you want to go with. I think Cersei's the character I'm the most uncertain with in terms of where do I think they're going to go in the future.
This is kind of getting into speculation for some of the other characters, but assuming George R. R. Martin wants to incorporate everything he wants to incorporate into the Winds of Winter book, which I don't know if it'll be possible to do within the 1,600 manuscript pages that he's
Yep.
allowed to publish in before it gets unpublishable. Um, I am assuming that, like yourself, young Griff will sit himself on the Iron Throne in King's Landing, and therefore Cersei will not be in King's Landing. But I'm assuming she'll be retreating over to Casterly Rock, specifically because George R. R. Martin also mentioned that we will see
Yep.
Casterly Rock at some point in the Winds of Winter. And the only character that would make sense for us to be our eyes and ears into Casterly Rock would be Cersei.
Yeah.
So by that point, again, I just, regardless of whether or not Cersei is in Casterly Rock or if she's in King's Landing, I would hope that by the end of the Winds of Winter, Arya will have kind of completed her character arc and will not be so determined to
Yep. Agreed.
unleash her vengeance on Cersei. She'll be realize that, like, okay, the North needs me. Revenge is nonsense. I'll just go be with John for now.
Another element that we haven't really talked about that I was kind of thinking of is, we have Nymeria's wolf pack. That's been a present thing throughout really all of the books. It's had a lot of attention brought to it. People even speculated we'll see it in the prologue of Winds of Winter. Don't know about that one, but it's definitely possible. Do you think Arya and Nymeria may have a meeting in the next book? Kind of maybe similar to the show, maybe not.
I don't know. I If a reunion were to happen, I do think we will see more warging into Nymeria in the Winds of Winter, but I don't think we'll have a physical reunion, at least not in the Winds of Winter. If we were to have a reunion, it wouldn't happen until either A Dream of Spring or a potential eighth book in the series if, George can't fit everything within the next two books. I, yeah, I don't think a reunion would happen in the Winds of Winter just
Yeah.
yet.
I think it's just there's so much packed into Arya's storyline. I don't even know how you'd fit
Yeah.
that. Like, unless it's just like a traveling chapter when she gets to Westeros and she's going to the twins or more into the Riverlands, and maybe she just dreams of them. Maybe that's the most we'll get. I mean, even in the sample chapter, the first part of the chapter is literally her like remembering her dreaming, I guess, with Nymeria.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I think we've gotten to where Arya is going to be in Winds of Winter. Let us know your opinions, what you think is going to happen with Arya, the Riverlands as a whole, and yeah, JC, thank you for joining the channel as always. Got to get you on
Yeah.
here more.
Thanks for having me on. Always a pleasure. Good to see everyone here on the Grease Goblins channel. Thank you. Thank you again, Grease.
Subscribe to the Advocate. The channel will be or the link will be in the top of the description as always. And
Oh, you're too
yeah,
kind. Thank you.
no problem. And we will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.